The Pangalactic Defense Academy was a place of sharp edges and bright lights. It was where the best young minds from across the galaxy came to learn how to protect the peace. The buildings were tall and shining. The training grounds were vast and could change into any environment, from frozen moons to desert worlds. Every species here was strong or smart in their own way. The Viridians had minds like computers, perfect for strategy. The Taurans were huge and strong, born warriors. Many others had special gifts, like seeing heat or talking to machines. But for all their differences, every cadet shared one common feeling: fear. Not of their tough teachers, not of the hard tests. They were afraid of a ghost in their machines. They were afraid of Cadet 0. No one knew who or what Cadet 0 was. It was just a name on a screen in the tactical simulator. The simulator was a giant room where cadets fought practice wars. They commanded digital fleets of starships and armies of soldiers. It was all a game, but it felt very real. And in this game, Cadet 0 was the final boss no one could beat. It did not just beat the other cadets. It destroyed them. It made them look like children playing at Warpoint. One day, Cadet Chai 1 was in the simulator. She was a Viridian and she was the top of her class. Her green skin seemed to glow under the lights of the command console. Her mind was sharp and fast. She had spent days planning her attack for this simulation. It was a complex mission to capture a space station. She moved her ships with perfect precision. Her instructors watched, nodding. It was a brilliant performance. Then Cadet 0 appeared. The enemy ships, controlled by 0, started to move. They did not do what they were supposed to do. They did not follow the rules of battle. 3 of Chaewon's best ships flew into an asteroid field. Sure, they were safe. But Cadet 0 had somehow predicted their path days ago. It had secretly placed gravity mines there hours before the battle even started. Chaewon's ships were torn apart before they even saw the enemy. She tried to pull her forces back, to form a new defensive line. But every order she gave, Cadet 0 was already waiting. It was like it could read her mind. Its ships were always in the right place at the right time. They set traps that she walked right into. In 3 minutes, her entire fleet was gone. The words "simulation failed" flashed on her screen in bright red letters. Chai 1 sat in her chair, stunned. She felt a cold emptiness in her stomach. She had not just lost. She had been outthought in every possible way. Another day, it was Cadet Jay's turn. Jay was a Tauran. He was bigger and stronger than almost anyone at the academy. His people believed in direct action. His plan was simple: a powerful, direct attack. A fist to the enemy's face. He gathered his forces and charged straight at the heart of Cadet 0's fleet. For a moment, it seemed to work. His ships were powerful. They broke through the first line of defense. Jay allowed himself a small, grim smile. Maybe strength was the answer. It was then that Cadet 0 revealed its true nature. It was not just a skilled commander. It was a puppeteer. It had let Jay break through. It had encouraged it. Jay's entire fleet was now deep inside the enemy's formation, surrounded. But Jay was not worried. His ships could fight their way out. Then his navigation officer spoke, his voice tight with panic. "Sir, our course..." Cadet 0 used its own retreating ships as bait. They led us directly into the gravity well of a nearby star. Jay looked at his main screen. The simulation showed the powerful pull of the star. His ships, built for fighting, were not built for this. They were being dragged in. One by one, their engines failed, and they were pulled into the fiery sun. His entire force was wiped out without Cadet 0 firing a single shot. Simulation failed. Jay slammed a heavy fist on his console. The screen cracked. He felt a shame deeper than any physical wound. These stories repeated over and over. Cadet 0 was a ghost, a legend, a monster. It was the thing that kept cadets awake at night. Who was it? The most popular theory was that it was a supercomputer, an AI designed by the instructors to test them. Some thought it was a brilliant instructor playing a cruel game. A few even whispered that it was a real, former cadet who had gone mad and now lived inside the simulator, taking revenge on those who took his place. The fear changed the academy. Cadets no longer went into the simulator hoping to win. They went in hoping to survive a few minutes longer than the last person. They started to play it safe to avoid making the mistakes others had made. But this did not help. Cadet Zero adapted. It found new weaknesses in their caution. The atmosphere in the halls was heavy. Conversations were quiet. Laughter was rare. Everyone was thinking about the next time they would have to face the Phantom. The academy was meant to be a place of hope, training the next generation of heroes. But under the shadow of Cadet Zero, it felt like a place of failure. Instructor Park watched all of this. He was a seasoned veteran with a calm face. He saw the fear in the cadets' eyes. He saw how it was breaking their spirit. He knew the truth about Cadet Zero, but he also knew that the lesson was not complete. The cadets were learning what it felt like to lose, to be outclassed. But they had not yet learned how to win. He looked at the roster for the new incoming cadets. His eyes stopped at one name: Jinsu. Species, human. Homeworld, Earth. He made a small note on his datapad. It was almost time for a new variable to be introduced into the equation. The academy was terrified. But perhaps terror was not the only way to teach. The arrival of new cadets was always a small event at the academy. It broke the usual routine of fear and training. This new group was not large. There were a few Taurans, their heavy steps echoing in the hall. A handful of Viridians, their sharp eyes taking in everything. And one human. His name was Jinsu. He was from Earth, a planet that was not famous for its warriors or its geniuses. Humans were known for being adaptable, but no one was sure what that really meant. Jinsu himself did not look special. He was of average height and build. He had dark hair and a quiet face. He did not stand with the proud strength of the Taurans. He did not have the intense focus of the Viridians. He just stood there, looking around with a calm curiosity. What everyone noticed was the thing floating next to his shoulder. It was a small drone about the size of a large fruit. It was a simple sphere of dull gray metal, covered in a few small scuffs and scratches. It had no visible weapons. It had no fancy lights. It looked like the kind of simple helper drone you would see carrying tools in a maintenance bay. It floated silently, keeping pace with Jinsu as he walked. The other cadets glanced at it, then looked away. They thought it was a piece of luggage or a personal assistant for taking notes. It was not impressive. In a place where cadets had advanced combat armor and powerful data slates, the little drone seemed very out of place. Jinsu's first official task was a live simulation. This was not a war game on a screen. This was a physical test inside a large training arena. The arena could change its layout to look like the inside of a spaceship, a jungle, or a city. Today, it was set up as a derelict space station. The mission was simple. The cadets, working in a team of 4, had to enter the station, find an important data core, and bring it back to the start point. The team was Jinsu, Chai-1, Jay, and another Tauran named Day. Chai-1 was not happy. She saw Jinsu as a weakness. He was an unknown, and his little drone was a distraction. Jay felt the same. He believed in strength and reliability. The human and his toy did not fit that description. They entered the dark, cold station through a fake airlock. The lights were broken, flashing on and off. The corridors were a maze of twisted metal and broken panels. Almost immediately, their problems started. The station was emitting a jamming signal. Their helmet radios crackled and died. They could not talk to each other. Their suit sensors, which were supposed to map the station and find enemies, showed only static. They were blind and deaf. Chai-1 took charge. She used hand signals, pointing for Jay and Day to take the left corridor while she and Jinsu took the right. She moved with confidence, but inside, she was worried. Without sensors, they were just guessing. They walked for several minutes, finding only dead ends and empty rooms. Meanwhile, Jinsu seemed strangely calm. He did not look at his own blank sensor screen. Instead, he looked at his little drone. He tapped it gently. The drone, which he called Bomi, lit up with a soft blue light on its surface. It made a quiet, whirring sound. It did not look like it was doing anything important. Chai-1 was getting frustrated. They were wasting time. She turned to Jinsu. about to gesture for him to hurry up, when he held up a hand. He pointed at Bomi. A faint, shimmering light came from the drone and projected an image into the air in front of them. It was a perfect, three-dimensional map of the station. The map was incredibly detailed. It showed every corridor, every room, every air vent. It showed their own position as a blue dot. And it showed the positions of the training robots, the enemies in this simulation, as red dots. The robots were hiding in ambush positions ahead, exactly where Chai-1 had been about to lead them. Chai-1 stared, her mind struggling to understand. How? The jamming signal was blocking all their technology. How was this simple drone able to see everything? Jinsu saw her confusion. He spoke in a low voice, his helmet close to hers so she could hear. Bomi is not using radio waves. The jamming blocks radio. She is using sound. Like a bat. She sends out small clicks we cannot hear. She listens for the echoes. She builds the map from the sound. It was such a simple, basic idea. It was not advanced technology. It was using a fundamental, physical principle in a clever way. While their high-tech sensors were useless, the little drone was seeing with its ears. Jinsu pointed on the map. He showed a path through a maintenance shaft that would let them avoid the ambush and get closer to the data core. It was a route their own sensors would never have found because it was too small and hidden. They found the maintenance shaft. Jay, with his great strength, easily pulled the cover off. They crawled through. It led them directly into the room with the data core. They grabbed it. On Bomi's map, they could see the other team of cadets, the enemy, still searching for them in the wrong part of the station. Using the live map to avoid all contact, they made it back to the airlock without a single fight. They had completed the mission perfectly. In the debriefing room, the instructor was pleased. Excellent work, Team 3. A flawless execution. You used your resources well. Chai-1 stood stiffly. She knew the truth. It was not her plan that had worked. It was the human's drone. Jay looked at Jinsu and Bomi with a new, thoughtful expression. He was a warrior who respected results. The human had produced results. But later, when they talked with other cadets, the story changed. The word that spread through the academy was not about a brilliant new strategy. It was about luck. I heard the human's little toy got lucky with a sensor reading, one cadet said. Yeah, my cousin had a drone like that for cleaning his apartment. It probably just malfunctioned and showed the right map by accident, said another. Chai-1 did not correct them. A part of her wanted to believe it was luck too. It was easier than admitting that the quiet, unassuming human had a tool she could not understand. It was easier than admitting that her own perfect logic had been useless, while his simple solution had worked. Jinsu did not seem to care what people thought. He went back to his quiet routine. He went to his classes. He ate his meals. And he always had Bomi floating by his side. Sometimes he would talk to it softly, and it would chirp and beep back at him. The other cadets saw this and smiled. They thought he was a little strange, talking to his machine. They did not realize that he was not giving it commands. He was having a conversation. He was thinking out loud, and Bomi was his partner in that thought. But to everyone else, he was just Cadet Jinsu, the human with the funny little drone. He was not a threat. He was not a genius. He was just there. And in the shadows of the simulator, the ghost known as Cadet Zero continued its unbeaten reign, waiting for its next challenger. No one even thought to connect the two. The idea that this human and his simple companion could challenge the Academy's greatest fear was laughable. For now, the fear of Cadet Zero was a cold fog that filled the Academy. It did not go away. It got worse. After every defeat, the cadets would talk in low voices. They would try to find a pattern, a weakness. But there was none. Cadet Zero was perfect. Instructor Park watched all of this. He saw how the fear was making the cadets rigid. They were so afraid of making a mistake that they could not think creatively. They followed the rulebooks exactly. And Cadet Zero, which knew the rulebooks better than anyone, beat them every time. It was time for a new kind of lesson. He needed to force them to look at the problem differently. He announced a new simulation. This would be the biggest one yet. It was a full-scale planetary assault. The cadets would have to command a fleet in space and an army on the ground. The teams would be larger. The best cadets would be leaders. The list of team members was posted on the main screen. Chai-Won saw her name as Fleet Commander. Jay was named Ground Commander. They were the obvious choices. They looked at the other names on their team. They were all skilled, reliable cadets. And then, at the very bottom of the list, was a name that made Chai-Won sigh. Jin-Soo. His role was listed as Tactical Analyst. It was a support role. It meant he would look at the data from the battle and offer suggestions. It was not a very important job. Most tactical analysts just repeated what the sensors already showed. Jay grunted when he saw it. "The human with the toy," he said to Chai-Won. "We will have to watch him. He might do something strange." Chai-Won nodded. "We will keep him busy. We will give him small tasks. We cannot let his unpredictability ruin our strategy." They went into the simulator. It was a massive room. The main screen showed a whole planet below them. Their fleet of digital warships floated in space. On the screen opposite, the enemy fleet waited. It was controlled by Cadet 0. The battle began. Chai-Won was ready. She had a complex plan. She split her fleet into 3 groups. One group would attack from the front. One would flank from the left. A small, fast group would sneak around from the right to attack the enemy's support ships. It was a classic and brilliant maneuver. For the first minute, it seemed to work. Then Cadet 0 reacted. The enemy fleet did not try to stop her flanking groups. Instead, it focused its entire power on her main force, the one attacking from the front. It was a brutal, direct assault. Chai-Won's main force was stronger, but Cadet 0's ships moved with perfect coordination. Every one of her orders was met with a countermove that made it useless. Her main force began to lose ships fast. "Pull them back," Jay yelled from his ground command station. "I am trying," Chai-Won said, her fingers flying over her console. But every escape route she plotted was already blocked by a small group of enemy ships she had not even noticed before. Cadet 0 had seen her plan from the very beginning. It had let her move her ships into a perfect trap. Meanwhile, on the planet, Jay was having his own problems. He was trying to land his troops. But the enemy anti-aircraft guns were too accurate. They were shooting his transport ships out of the sky. He tried to land in a different place, a canyon that should have been hidden. But the enemy was waiting for him there, too. It was like Cadet 0 could see the future. The situation was getting desperate. The main screen showed their fleet strength dropping quickly. The mood on the command deck was tense and fearful. This was just like all the other times. They were losing, and there was nothing they could do. Through all this chaos, Jin-Soo was quiet. He sat at his small analyst station. He was not looking at the main battle screen. He was looking at his own private screen. On it, streams of data flowed. Bomi, his little drone, was plugged directly into the console. Its blue light was pulsing slowly. Chai-Won noticed his silence. She was angry and frustrated. "Analyst," she snapped. "What are you doing? Give me something useful. Where is their fleet weak?" Jin-Soo did not look up. "It is not weak anywhere," he said softly. "Then what is the point of you being here?" she said, her voice sharp. Jin-Soo finally looked at her. His face was calm, but his eyes were focused. "It is not predicting our strategy," he said. "It is listening to us." Jay laughed, a harsh sound. "Our communications are encrypted. It is impossible to listen." "Not to the words," Jin-Soo said. "To the pattern." He turned his screen so they could see it. It showed a complex graph. There were spikes and dips. "This shows every time we send a command to our ships," he explained. "And this line shows the reaction time of Cadet 0's forces." He pointed. "See? Every time we send an order, there is a tiny, almost instant change in its fleet's behavior. It is not reading what we are saying. It is reading that we are saying something." Chai-Won stared at the graph. Her logical mind saw the correlation immediately. It was undeniable. Cadet 0 was not a mind reader. It was a pattern reader. It used the fact of their communication to map their command structure. It knew who was in charge. It knew how long it took for an order to be given and carried out. It used that tiny delay to plan its counterattacks. The simple truth of it was terrifying. Their greatest strength, their ability to talk and plan together, was their greatest weakness. So what do we do? Jay asked, his voice now serious. If we stop talking, we cannot command. We will lose for sure. Jinsu looked at Bomi. The drone chirped quietly. We do not stop communicating, he said. We change how we communicate. We create noise. We send so many false signals and random commands that the pattern becomes meaningless. He proposed a radical plan. Bomi would generate hundreds of fake, low-level commands. They would be sent to every ship and soldier. Most of them would be useless, a command to turn on a light or to run a system check. These fake signals would hide their real commands in a storm of digital noise. Furthermore, they would stop giving direct orders. Instead, Bomi would give each ship captain a set of simple, pre-planned maneuvers. The captains would act on their own, following a random sequence that Bomi created. There would be no central command for Cadet Zero to listen to. It would be like trying to hear one voice in a crowd of thousands. It was a crazy plan. It went against every rule of military command. It was chaos. But they had no other choice. Chai-Won, her jaw tight, agreed. Jay did too. They had nothing to lose. They activated the plan. The storm of fake signals began. On the main screen, their fleet, which had been moving in neat formations, suddenly seemed to fall apart. Ships started moving in strange, unpredictable ways. It looked like pure madness. For the first time since the battle began, Cadet Zero's fleet hesitated. Its perfect, synchronized movements faltered. It was like a machine that had been given a puzzle it could not solve. It was looking for a pattern, and there was none. Only chaos. One of Jay's transport ships, acting on a random maneuver from Bomi, managed to slip through the enemy's anti-aircraft fire and land its troops. It was a small victory, a tiny crack in the Phantom's armor. But it was a start. They had made Cadet Zero pause. And in that pause, they felt a new emotion for the first time in that simulator. A flicker of hope. The command deck was silent except for the low hum of computers. Everyone was watching the main screen. The chaos was working. Cadet Zero's fleet was no longer attacking with its perfect, scary rhythm. The enemy ships moved in ways that seemed confused. They were still dangerous, but they had lost their purpose. They were like a snake that had been hit on the head. Chai-Won watched, her mind racing. She was a planner. She liked order. This storm of random movements made her feel nervous. But she could not argue with the results. For the first time, they were not losing. Jinsu sat at his station, his eyes moving between his screen and Bomi. The little drone's light was a steady blue. It was working hard, creating thousands of fake commands and sending the real orders hidden among them. Jinsu was not just letting Bomi do all the work. He was talking to it in a low voice. Bomi, increase random signals to Group 2, he would say. Or, the enemy is clustering near the moon. Suggest a dispersion pattern for our scouts. Bomi would chirp and whir. New data would flow onto his screen. It was not a person giving orders to a machine. It was a conversation between two partners. Jinsu provided the intuition, the gut feeling. Bomi provided the numbers, the scale, the processing power. Together, they were creating a new kind of strategy. Jay saw an opportunity. On the ground, his troops had finally landed. But they were pinned down by enemy forces. He wanted to launch a strong attack to break through. He turned to Jinsu. Human, can your machine make a path for my soldiers? Jinsu looked at the map of the planet. He saw where Jay's troops were. He saw the enemy positions. A direct attack would be bloody. Many of their digital soldiers would be lost. A direct charge is what it expects, Jinsu said. It is a logical move. We must be illogical. He had an idea. He pointed to a large, rocky canyon on the map. It was a terrible place for a battle. There was no cover. It was a death trap. Jay, move your forces here. Make it look like you are setting up a defensive line. Jay stared at him. That is a terrible position. We will be wiped out. You will not be there for long, Jinsu said. It is a trick. He explained the plan. Jay's soldiers would march into the canyon. They would make a lot of noise, sending fake signals to make it look like their entire army was moving there. Cadet Zero, seeing a large force in a weak position, would surely send its own forces to destroy them. And that was the goal, to make the enemy look away. While Cadet Zero was focused on the canyon, the real attack would happen somewhere else. Chaewon's smallest and fastest ships, following a path Bomi calculated, would fly through a dangerous area of space filled with asteroids. It was a route no sane commander would take. But it was the last place Cadet Zero would look. Jay agreed. It was a risky plan, but all their plans were risky now. He ordered his troops to move into the canyon. They marched in, making their presence very obvious. Just as Jinsu predicted, Cadet Zero took the bait. A large part of the enemy ground forces began to move towards the canyon. In space, the enemy fleet also shifted, putting more ships in position to support the attack on what they thought was the main ground force. It was working. The enemy was looking the wrong way. Now it was Chaewon's turn. Her small fleet of fast ships, led by a brave cadet, began their dangerous journey through the asteroid field. On the main screen, it looked like a suicide mission. The ships weaved and dodged between the giant rocks. One wrong move and they would be destroyed. But Bomi was guiding them. The drone was processing the movement of every asteroid, calculating the safest path in real time. It was not a path a human could ever find. It was a path that only a machine could see. The ships moved like ghosts through the chaos, unseen by the enemy. Back in the canyon, Jay's forces were in trouble. The enemy had arrived and was attacking. His soldiers were dug in, but they were outnumbered. They would not last long. How much longer? Jay yelled over the sound of simulated explosions on his screen. Soon, Jinsu said, his voice calm. He was watching Chaewon's ships. They were almost through the asteroid field. The tension on the command deck was immense. Everyone was holding their breath. They were so close. If this failed, they would lose everything. Then, Chaewon's voice cut through the tension. The strike group is through. They are approaching the enemy command center. On the main screen, a new group of blue dots appeared behind the enemy fleet. They had come out of the asteroid field right at the enemy's most important area. The enemy command center was a large space station. It was heavily defended, but all its defenses were facing the wrong way. They were facing the main battle, not the small fleet that had just appeared behind them. Chaewon's strike group opened fire. Their weapons hit the command station's weak points. The station's shields flickered and failed. At that moment, in the canyon, the enemy forces stopped their attack. They froze. In space, the enemy ships also stopped moving. The entire simulation froze. The main screen went dark for a second. Then, bright green words appeared. Victory. For a moment, no one made a sound. They just stared at the screen. They could not believe it. They had won. They had beaten Cadet Zero. Then, a cheer erupted. It was not a loud cheer at first, but a slow, disbelieving one. Cadets clapped each other on the back. Jay let out a deep, booming laugh. Chaewon leaned back in her chair, a huge smile on her face for the first time in months. They had done it. They had slain the ghost. All eyes turned to Jinsu. He was still sitting quietly. He unplugged Bomi from the console. The little drone floated up to his shoulder. This blue light was calm. Jinsu gave it a small pat. Good work, Bomi, he whispered. He did not look proud or boastful. He just looked satisfied, like he had just finished a difficult job. The other cadets looked at him and his simple drone with a new feeling. It was not just respect. It was something closer to awe. They had seen the impossible happen. And it had not been done with a powerful weapon or a grand speech. It had been done by a quiet human and his clever companion, thinking together. The victory cheer did not last long. The bright green victory on the screen was replaced by a simple message. All senior cadets report to debriefing room Alpha immediately. The mood shifted from celebration to a nervous curiosity. What would the instructors say? Would they be in trouble for using such a strange, chaotic strategy? The cadets filed into the debriefing room. It was a large, circular room with seats rising in levels around a central stage. Instructor Park stood in the center, his hands behind his back. His face was serious, as always. Chai-won, Jay, and Jin-soo found seats near the front. Jin-soo placed Bomi on the desk in front of him. The little drone was still and quiet. The room fell silent. Instructor Park looked around at all the young faces. He saw the expectation in their eyes. They had done something no one else had. They wanted praise. They wanted an explanation. Instructor Chai-won began, unable to contain herself. We defeated Cadet Zero. What was it? Oi? A test. Park gave a small, slow smile. It was a rare sight. Cadet Zero, he said, his voice clear and calm, was not an artificial intelligence. It was not a single instructor playing a trick on you. He paused, letting the mystery hang in the air. Cadet Zero is a program, but it is a very special one. It is a digital copy of the combined strategic knowledge of our 5 greatest wartime admirals. It has studied every major battle in galactic history. It knows every approved tactic, every standard counter-move, every rule in the Book of War. A murmur went through the room. That explained its perfection. They had not been fighting a monster. They had been fighting the ghost of legendary heroes. You were not meant to beat it, Park continued. You were meant to learn from it. You were meant to learn what it feels like to face an enemy that is, by all known standards, perfect. The lesson was supposed to be about humility, about learning to lose with grace, and to learn from that loss. He turned his gaze directly to Jin-soo. But Cadet Jin-soo and his partner did not follow the lesson plan. All eyes in the room turned to the human and his drone. Your strategy was not in any of the textbooks, Park said. It was not approved. It was technically a violation of standard command protocol. You created chaos. You abandoned central control. You used a maintenance drone for tactical analysis. He listed these things not with anger, but with a kind of wonder. Then he asked the question everyone was thinking. Cadet Jin-soo, how did you know that would work? Jin-soo stood up. He was not a great speaker. He looked a little uncomfortable. He picked up Bomi from the desk. The drone felt solid and familiar in his hand. I did not know it would work, he said honestly. I just thought about the problem differently. He looked at Bomi. Everyone saw Cadet Zero as a super smart commander. I saw it as a machine that follows rules. Very complex rules, but still rules. It was built to beat any commander who also follows rules. So, the only way to win was to stop following rules. He held up Bomi. Bomi is not a weapon. She is not a normal computer. We found her on my home planet. She was old in a scrapyard. I fixed her. We learned to work together. I do not give her commands. We talk. I have ideas. She has data. We put them together. He looked at Instructor Park. You said Cadet Zero was made from the minds of your greatest admirals. Bomi and I, we are just 2 partners. We are not great admirals. We just think together. That was our only advantage. The room was completely silent. His simple words made more sense than any complex lecture they had ever heard. Instructor Park nodded slowly. And that is the real lesson. The lesson I could not teach you with Cadet Zero. He addressed the whole room now. The galaxy is vast and full of dangers we cannot imagine. Some enemies will be stronger. Some will be smarter. Some will know all our rules and use them against us. If all you can do is follow the rules you have been taught, you will fail. He pointed to Jin-soo and Bomi. Your greatest weapon is not your strength, Cadet J. It is not your logic, Cadet Chai-won. It is your ability to think in a new way, to see a new path, to use the tools you have in ways no one has thought of before. Humanity's gift is not any one skill. It is their ability to connect, to adapt, and to create partnerships that break all the molds. He walked over to Jin-soo and looked at Bomi. This clever companion is not military gear. It is a partner. And that partnership, that way of thinking together, is what terrified the Academy. Not because it was scary, but because it was new. And it is what saved you all today. The fear of Cadet Zero was gone. In its place was a new feeling. It was excitement. It was possibility. The academy was no longer a place where they learned how to lose. It was a place where they could learn how to think. After the debriefing, other cadets crowded around Jinsu. They were not mocking him anymore. They were asking questions. "Can Bomi really understand you?" one asked. "How did you know to use sound in the derelict station?" asked another. Jinsu answered their questions as best he could. He was still quiet, but he was not alone. Chai-Won and Jay stood with him. They were his teammates now. Later, as they walked out of the room, Chai-Won looked at Bomi with a new appreciation. "It is a very clever companion," she said. Jinsu smiled. "She is. But she is not the only one." He looked at Chai-Won and Jay. "We were clever together. All of us." Jay nodded, a grunt of agreement. "Next time," he said, "we will not be so terrified." And for the first time, everyone knew it was true. The phantom was gone. The future was bright, and it was full of new ideas. The academy felt different after the defeat of Cadet Zero. The heavy fog of fear had lifted. The hallways were brighter. The conversations were louder. Cadets laughed more often. They were not just students anymore. They were a team that had faced a nightmare and won. The victory changed how people saw Jinsu and Bomi. No one called the drone a toy now. When they walked through the halls, other cadets would nod to them with respect. Some would even ask Jinsu for advice on their own projects. "How would you and Bomi look at this problem?" they would ask. Jinsu was always happy to help. He was still quiet, but he was no longer an outsider. The victory also changed the teams. Chai-Won, Jay, and Jinsu were often put together for simulations. They had learned how to combine their different skills. Chai-Won was the planner, the one who thought 3 steps ahead. Jay was the force, the one who could break through any wall. And Jinsu and Bomi were the wild cards, the ones who could see the path no one else could find. They did not win every time. That was not the point. The point was that they were no longer afraid to lose. They experimented. They tried crazy ideas. Sometimes the ideas failed, but they always learned something new. The instructors were happy to see this new spirit. The academy was finally becoming the place it was meant to be. One day, a new challenge was announced. It was not a simulation. It was a real physical competition. All the cadet teams would race through a dangerous obstacle course on a nearby moon. The course had deep canyons, unstable ground, and strong winds. The teams would use small, one-person scout ships to navigate the course. The first team to get all its members to the finish line would win. Chai-Won, Jay, and Jinsu were a team. They went to the hangar to see their ships. The ships were fast, but they were old and not very powerful. They would need to be clever to win. Chai-Won immediately started making a plan. "We will fly in a tight formation," she said. "We will use the lead ship to break the wind for the others. We will take the direct route through the main canyon." Jay looked at the map. "The direct route is the shortest, but it will be crowded. Every team will be trying to take it. There will be a lot of traffic." Jinsu was quiet. He was looking at the map with Bomi. The drone projected a small, shimmering image of the course. It showed the canyons, the wind patterns, and the predicted traffic. "The direct route is what everyone expects," Jinsu said finally. "It is the logical choice. But the rules do not say we have to take the shortest path." He pointed to a part of the map far from the main canyon. It showed a jagged range of tall, sharp mountains. The path through them looked narrow and dangerous. The wind there was much stronger. No one in their right mind would fly through there. "If we go through the Spire Mountains, no one else will be there," Jinsu said. "There will be no traffic. But the wind is a problem. Could smash us into the rocks." Chai-Won shook her head. "It is too risky. The ships are not strong enough to handle those winds." "But what if we do not fight the wind?" Jinsu asked. He looked at Bomi. "What if we use it?" He explained his idea. Bomi could analyze the wind patterns in real time. It could find the currents and flows within the storm. Instead of fighting against the wind, they could let the wind push them. They could ride the air currents like a bird, using very little power from their ships. It would be like surfing on a wave of AI. It was a brilliant and terrifying idea. They would be flying through a deadly maze of rocks, trusting a drone to guide them on invisible waves of wind. Jay looked at the mountains on the map. He looked at Jinsu's calm face. He looked at the little drone. He grinned. I like it. It is not boring. Chai-won took a deep breath. She thought about the crowded main canyon. She thought about the chaos of every team fighting for the same space. Then she thought about the clean, empty, dangerous path through the mountains. She made her decision. We will take the mountain path. The day of the race arrived. Dozens of scout ships lined up at the start. The signal sounded, and the ships shot forward. Just as predicted, most of the ships turned towards the main canyon. It was a chaotic mess of ships jostling for position. Only 3 small ships turned the other way. They flew towards the dark and jagged spire mountains. As they entered the mountains, the wind grabbed them. It was like a giant hand shaking them. The ships were tossed up and down. Alarms beeped inside their cockpits. It was hard to see through the blowing dust. Jinsu, this is bad. Jay yelled over the radio. Trust Bomi. Jinsu answered. Follow my ship exactly. Jinsu's ship, guided by Bomi's calculations, did not fight the turbulence. It leaned into it, turned slightly to the left, then dipped to the right. It was not flying a straight line. It was dancing. It was moving with the wind, not against it. Chai-won and Jay watched his movements on their screens. They copied him exactly. Felt wrong. Felt like they were losing control. But they trusted their teammate. Soon they felt it. Their ships stopped fighting. The shaking became a gentle rocking. They were no longer being thrown around. They were being carried. They were surfing on the powerful wind, letting it push them forward at incredible speed. They weaved through the narrow passages between the tall rock spires. It was beautiful and scary at the same time. Meanwhile, in the main canyon, the other teams were stuck in a traffic jam. Ships were bumping into each other. The race had slowed to a crawl. Jinsu's team burst out of the far side of the Spire Mountains. The finish line was right in front of them. The air was calm. They flew the last stretch easily. They crossed the finish line together. They were the first ones there. They had won.as. They landed their ships. The other teams were just beginning to arrive from the main canyon. They looked confused. How had the human and his friends won? They had taken the long way. Instructor Park was waiting for them. He was smiling again. I heard you took the scenic route, he said. Jinsu, Chai-won, and Jay stood together. Bomi floated quietly by Jinsu's side. It was the clearest path, Jinsu said simply. Park looked at the 3 cadets and the little drone. He saw a Viridian strategist, a Tauran warrior, a human thinker, and his mechanical partner. They were all different, but they worked together perfectly. They were the future of the Academy. They were the future of the galaxy. The story of how Cadet Zero was defeated was now a legend. But the story of this team was just beginning, and everyone knew that wherever they went, they would bring their clever new way of thinking with them. The Academy was no longer a place of fear. It was a place of hope.